Before Jason is going to interrogate me, I believe, and you too as well, I wanted to talk a bit about the process of creating system change and how to do that. And then basically, why are these processes called labs? If you look at general, what does a lab do, and just think of a lab working for a large corporation, for instance. The lab process mostly starts with a hypothesis. An idea, well, this could be the problem, or this could be a new solution, but it's just an idea, nothing more than that. And then the first thing you start to do is to start to research it. You start to gather data, you maybe interview people to get a better understanding of what is the problem, and then go through a process of ideation for possible solutions. And some of them solutions then you start to test out. Do these ideas really work? And those that work, you try to bring to the market. Well, in essence, that's lab process is what we try to apply, but now to really complex social challenges. And the question is, how do we do that? So that starts with developing new solutions. And I think that a lot of this is grounded in design thinking and human-centered design, where it starts with first, if you have a hunch, but then first deeply understanding the problem from a user perspective, through user interviews, through ethnography, observations, workshop with users, and really try to find a new perspective on this problem. To give an example of that, for another challenge that we're working on, the future of food, we focus on fruit. And it's really fascinating, because if you look at organic fruit and how can we make the food economy in Ontario more healthy and sustainable, and for us, really fascinating thing is that if you look at consumer demand in the last 4 or 5 years, consumer demand for organic fruit is up in double digits. It's like 10 to 12% year-on-year growth. It's like fascinating. It's like, this is good business. On the other side, on the supply side, 30,000 jobs being lost in the last decade in processing facilities. So there's an enormous mismatch between the demand and the supply. How does it come? We've interviewed over 30 fruit farmers to get a better understanding of that. What are the barriers and the opportunities for fruit farmers to actually innovate and to actually meet the demand for more healthy foods, which it's almost a no-brainer. Everybody wants that. And there's even good business in it, but still, we don't manage to do that. Then the second part of the process is this process of co-creation. You start to develop ideas, brainstorms, all kinds of ways of developing new interventions. But they're still just ideas. And then you prototype them on a small scale. And then you go towards scale. And it sounds all very easy, but believe me, this is hard sweat, hard work, and with lots of failures. And also in between, sometimes the process can be delayed a lot. For instance, with the understanding, we've now interviewed all these fruit farmers, so we thought, no, let's start to work on co-creation. So we invited them for a workshop in mid-May. And their answer was, well, that's not really the best time and season for us to do a workshop, because we're basically out in the field working. Please come back in November, October. So we had to basically stop the process, because we could say, well, we could do a co-creation process without the fruit farmers, but that doesn't really make sense. So we now have to wait to October to get them on board. So sometimes it can take longer than you think. But in order to get to scale, there's different ways of scaling. And I think that is actually one of the things within the design thinking piece that has not deserved a lot of attention. And we should think a lot harder about how to reach scale. And especially the design thinking labs mostly think about products, to be honest. And the danger of a lab only focusing on design is that it's actually nothing different than a think tank. And we all know what a think tank is. Basically, you do some research, then you organize a conference, with a report telling the government what they should do differently. That's exactly what we think doesn't work anymore. But if we only go to the co-creation stage, we basically do the same. We do some nice interviews, then in a hip location we do a brainstorm session with a world cafe in an open space. That gives to a report telling the government what they should do differently. It's getting to the action and prototyping and then going to scale which really does the trick. And to get to scale, I think we need to do two things. And one is, we need you. We need policy change. In order for those solutions to get to scale from a small prototype to a system-wide diffusion, we probably need to change funding schemes, legislation, procedures, legislation. So from day one, we need government on board when we develop those new solutions so that we can have a discussion on what is the problem, not just understanding the problem, but framing the problem and creating an urgency for change and for policy change. Creating visions, collective ambitions, where do we want to go to, and then building the evidence on the basis of our prototypes. And then design the policies that are needed, the change that is needed through sort of building a support system for these new solutions to exist and to grow. The other part of the scaling is building the capacity, looking at the people, because we can have new solutions, we can have new policies, but if the people do not know how to apply those solutions in their own practice, we will not have change. And that often starts with the stakeholders, really small, and then reaching out to the innovators. And I think that most of you would be in that category of innovators, the people that you can basically send them a tweet and say, let's change something, and they'll show up. But to be honest, and there's been research, extensive research by Everett Rogers since the 60s, the 70s, and the 90s, it's been replicated, only about 2 to 5% of the people in a given organization are innovators. And actually, rightfully so. I mean, an organization existing only of innovators, that's actually pretty difficult. So we need to basically grow a social movement in size and in skills, reaching out from those innovators, those 2 to 5% of the people, to the early adapters, which are the 15% of the people that say, well, I like change, I'll play with you, but you have to help me a bit. And maybe it would be nice if there's some sort of a safety net, so that if I fall, you help me back up again. And then growing that movement towards the early majority, which is about the third of the people that say, well, if you want me to change, if you want me to do my job differently, then tell me how, provide me with the right incentives, give me a training or a toolkit, because else I won't do it, and rightfully so. It's actually a very good survival strategy for most people. So that together gives sort of what we call the periodic table of system change, which is our process. And I like to look at it like, I don't know who of you have been to the circus and has seen this spinning, Chinese spinning plate. Well, these are our spinning plates. And we have to make sure that every plate is turning in order to create system change. And sometimes the order, there are no arrows in this model, because sometimes the order may be that on one track we're going faster than on the other. Sometimes we have to go back because we did things from the wrong assumption. But we sort of need to have all plates spinning. And that's what we try to organize as a lab. One last thing, on Monday, May 26th, we will organize a conference called Labs for Systems Change, where many of the labs from around the world that are working on this, like MindLab in Denmark, and 27 Region in France, and Kennisland, and Nesta, the GovLab in New York, will be in Toronto on a conference, but we will live stream that as well, free on the web. So everybody can basically enjoy it. So I would definitely invite you to have a look at that. And on our website we will post all the details of that. So that's sort of my talk. Let's have a Q&A and an interrogation, Jason. Thank you.